Aaron.
Hi, I'd like to ask the panel what living in an independent Scotland could do for me.
Aaron.
Can I just say to Mr Harvey and Ms Sturgeon, you just blamed the neoliberal centre-right. If I can take you back to 2007, Alex Salmond wrote a letter, Ms Sturgeon, in 2007 to Sir Fred Goodwin. And in 2007, in that letter, it was picked up by Channel 4 News that he would offer every assistance for Mr Goodwin to take the ABN AMRO takeover to its, its logical conclusion, which was takeover. That led to the biggest banking collapse. Royal Bank of Scotland, now one moment, and the Royal Bank of Scotland would have been a Scottish bank under independence, and Scottish taxpayers would have picked up the bill. In 2008, Mr Salmond then travelled to Harvard University and made his now infamous Arc of Prosperity Celtic Line speech, which is actually mysteriously missing from the SNP website. I'm sure the search party's gone out. But in that speech, he told us we were in an arc of prosperity with countries like Norway, Ireland and Iceland. And a few months later, Iceland had the biggest banking collapse of any developed nation. And finally, if I can say, at the same time, Mr Salmond said that we should be in the euro. Now, at the moment, Mr Salmond's saying none of these things. So the centre-right neoliberal agenda that may well have failed, Mr Salmond bought into that and at the same time cozied up to Rupert Murdoch.
That's fine.
Isabel, Patrick Harvey just said that they don't have the answers. Isn't the point that people across Scotland are asking? The SNP, whose party has been in existence for almost 80 years, still don't have big, substantial answers to the questions that people are asking on the economy, on defence, on welfare. And time after time, the SNP have no answers to these big questions. They're asking us to say yes to a proposition that has no information, detail or flesh whatsoever. Isn't that a bit cheeky, Nicola Sturgeon?
Just at the start, Nicola Sturgeon said it was under the UK government that the Bank of Scotland and various other banks went through troubles. But then again, we've also got Greece and Spain and all throughout Europe, countries and banks failing. So is that the UK government's fault as well? It's a global economy. And what would Scotland not be better as part of a bigger group of countries, the UK, to try and get a way through that and just have a bit more security in troubled times?
The issue the Scottish people really want to know about is whether in 10 years' time Scotland will be financially better off if they leave the Union. Please, can we have some straight answers?
I think Patrick Harvey's right when he says there's bigger issues than just the kind of economic wallet, as it were. But surely that being the case, the devolution max option gives us many of the benefits without very, very few of the risks.
Okay.
About the economy, I'd just like to ask Ms Sturgeon in particular. Your party, or Mr Salmond, was a while talking about the Bank of England having contributing to our interest rates and things. How can we then be an independent country if they're, involved in our economic policy? How does that make us an independent country?
Okay.
I just find that I really enjoy the news, and I read an awful lot on the news and current affairs, and I've followed the SNP and I've followed all the parties in front of me. If there was an obvious financial advantage of being independent, I would know that. And I would know that now, and I can't see it. And nobody's going to put money on a horse that they don't think is going to win. Nobody's going to buy a lottery ticket they don't think it's going to win. Yes, the money can go in and fund the system, but can somebody in the SNP tell me what the financial advantage is to the country of independence?
Okay. This gentleman here in the blue shirt.
Hi, I'm really fed up with the money argument. I think there's this obsession with money. I think there's no link. There's no link between... Well, no, there's no link between money and happiness, whether or not it would be £100 better off or £200 worse off, and anything. When you look, I'd like to see a happier and more self-confident Scotland. And when you look at... No, but that wouldn't make necessarily an impact upon our happiness. When you look at things that are happiness, it's not just about material comfort. There's things about a sense of community, whether people can make decisions, whether they've got an authentic lifestyle.
But the Tartan brand, Scottish brand, is one of the strongest in the world. I love being Scottish.
Just quite horrified to see that nobody on the panel was going to say that over 10 years they expected Scotland to become better off. Now, and Patrick Harvey clearly sort of thinks it's quite likely we'll be poorer. Now, the world economy, outside the EU at least, is growing at 6% every year. That means that 10%, at over 10 years, we will have doubled the size of the world economy, and yet none of these people even expect that Scotland, an independent Scotland, would be in any way better off over that period. I think that's... I don't agree with the gentleman in front that finance is unimportant. I do want to live in a better off world.
Right.
For the Europe and the Euro issue, shouldn't we get like clear-cut answers? Like we want like a yes or no. Will we be in Europe? Will we be in the Euro by the time if we're independent or not? Like why hasn't anyone like asked for a real yes or no answer of the Euro question?
Right, Nicholas.
Okay, I think the first thing we need to take into account is that none of the people on the panel can actually decide if we go into Europe or not. It's up to Europe to decide, not the SNP. And Ruth Davidson's the only one that's acknowledged that. And secondly, with regards to the sterling, I think it's more important to look at the relationship that we would have with the UK if we actually abandoned them. And I think it's more important to look at that and the effect that that would have on our financial situations.
Under the UK, currently people with disabilities are losing their benefits, single parents are losing their benefits, college students are losing their EMA. There are communities around Scotland that have been poor, underprivileged and have massive social problems for decades. How exactly is the UK looking after its poorest?
Nicola, you are really, really annoying me. You're sitting on national television and you are lying. The Bank of England, okay, under the Bank of England Act 1998, no political party has representation on the MPC, and you're sitting there saying, guaranteed, a separate Scotland would have a representative on the Monetary Policy Committee. And secondly, at best, there is conflicting opinion about the EU, whether a separate Scotland would be in it or out it. And again, you're sitting saying 100% Scotland would be in it. That is just not the case. And I think it's an absolute disgrace.
Can I ask Nicola a question very directly? And it's about the principles of this issue. If you, as a nationalist, and you've launched your campaign on the basis you want people in Scotland to make decisions here, why would you, as a nationalist, want to leave a union whose long-term tendency is to devolve and localise power in Scotland to join one which wants to explicitly centralise power in the European Union over the long term? Why, as a nationalist, would you want that?
Yeah, Nicola Sturgeon, the SNP, may not have done the homework in this regard. Thankfully, Ruth Davidson has. Now, on the assumption that we would have to join the Euro to join the European Union, does that change your stance on things, Nicola? Yeah.
I think it's easy for pro-independence people to say that, well, what have the British government done to help inequality? But Glasgow and Scotland as a whole has a massive problem with inequality. And the SNP say we're going to have more social justice. But how are we going to have more social justice? How are you going to get to the root causes? Because successive governments have failed to do this. What makes us think that just because we now are independent that we're suddenly going to come up with some massive great solution?
Okay.
Yes, what we're hearing is simply just the yes side throwing facts at us saying we will be better, this will be better, but what we need is actual hard facts and hard points. You know, they're just building on the austere situation in the UK at the moment. They're playing in the back of that. We don't want that. We want to hear the points and why and projections and what's going to happen to us in the future. Yes,
Colin.
How would any future Scottish Government replace the defence-related jobs which will be inevitably lost post-independence?
Colin.
So, Nicola, have you had a word with BAE then? Are you guaranteeing that BAE will continue to build the English Navy?
The question is, on the subject of Trident, when the day comes, or if or when the day comes when Scotland's independent, who picks up the tab for the removal of these weapons from Scottish waters?
Can someone please tell me, who are Scotland going to nuke with this weapon?
The fact is, it was said many years ago now that you cannot uninvent nuclear weapons. And the reality is, if we take some sort of moral stance that we are not going to have them, we then have to hope that some of the lunatic extremist people around will play the gentleman and not attack us because we haven't got nuclear weapons. Life isn't that simple. We need to be adequately defended.
I'm a member of the SNP, as Nicola knows, and I'm very much pro-NATO, and I'm pro that the American submarine fleet remains at Faslane. So I would say that the SNP really needs to have the debate, and we really need to move towards being in NATO, because that is the shield of Western defence and we really need to be in it.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask Mr. Sarwar. He said that he himself would like to obliterate nuclear weapons, not just from Scotland but from England as well. It's my understanding that that's also Joanne Lamont's personal view, but because it's not the personal view of the Labour Party across the UK, the Scottish Labour Party are unable to take forward their views. So surely that shows that you're not able, as a Scottish Labour Party or as a Scottish party at all, to put forward what you consider to be the programme for this country that you want, because you're obstructed by the UK.
Thank you. So many of the arguments we've heard tonight just scream to me that we should be voting for independence, because whether we're going to be in sterling or a member of the EU or retain the monarchy or get rid of nuclear weapons, all of these decisions can be made by us as a sovereign independent nation. But only once we're independent. We seem to be getting away from the discussion tonight. Many of these debates and many of these arguments are surely going to be held at the first Scottish elections after independence. If the Labour Party want to retain Trident, let them put it in their manifesto for an independent Scotland and see what the people of Scotland say.
Hello. Can Scotland be independent if the monarchy is retained? Hello.
I was actually born and raised in a country where you elect the head of state. And I can tell you, I don't want to go down that road here. I really don't. Possibly the German model, but I cannot see the American or South American model, or the model in a lot of countries where there's a competitive party election for head of state with the waste and the money that is involved. I just don't want it here.
Elizabeth II, now I'm ex-army, so God bless her. But we have Elizabeth II, we never had Elizabeth I. Now Charles doesn't want to be Charles III, apparently he wants to be George VII. Well, when we become independent, not if, when we become independent, if we don't want Charles III or George VII, I opt we go for Princess Anne. She's chairman of the Scottish Rugby Union.
From Aberdeen, actually, near the northeast Scotland, oil and gas resource area. But my point, actually, everybody like independence, democracy, freedom of speech. This is good. Everybody like it. Britain at this moment fourth position in the world economically. But if it is actually become independent country, will be 4 times 4, 16, or become second in position or first in position? What will be the position of the Scotland that time?